I woke up on the third morning with my phone still warm from the night before, screen cracked from the times I dropped it checking for his name. Good morning, Angel, he'd typed at 7:03 a.m. on Monday, and I'd floated the whole day on those two words, replaying the vibration like a song hook. Then nothing. Tuesday blurred into Wednesday, and the silence grew teeth. I kept the ringer on max, even in the shower, heart leaping at every spam call, only to sag when it wasn't him. I pictured him laughing somewhere without me, maybe texting someone else the same sunrise greeting, and the image burned hotter than any reply could cool. By Wednesday night, I was bargaining with the ceiling fan. If it spins 5 times before I count to 10, he'll text. It spun 7, still nothing. I realized I wasn't just waiting, I was rationing oxygen. Each minute without a ping felt like a plastic bag tightening over my ribs. I scrolled our old messages for hidden clues, the way sailors once read stars, desperate to map how Good Morning Angel could sail so quickly into the doldrums. Somewhere between the second and third glass of water, I caught my reflection in the black screen, eyes wide, pulse drumming at my throat, a woman tethered to a rectangle of glass. I asked the empty kitchen why a stranger's 3-second thumb swipe had become my atmosphere. The echo came back small and honest, because when it arrives, I get to breathe. I used to call the AM ache in my chest proof that he mattered. I'd scroll back to the last heart emoji, replay the way he said Angel, and let the absence after that single ping swell into a cathedral of longing. I thought the spikes were Cupid's fingerprints. If I felt high enough, then crashed hard enough, surely this was the real thing. Then one night, while I was curled on the bathroom floor counting the seconds since his last scene, my Fitbit buzzed, heart rate 127. Not metaphor data. That tiny vibration cracked the story. I wasn't lovesick. I was dysregulated. The roller coaster wasn't destiny choreographing a grand romance. It was my nervous system misfiring, mistaking inconsistency for oxygen. I started picturing the craving as a red dashboard light, not a red rose. When the text didn't come, the alarm didn't mean he's the one. It meant I'm scared and alone. Reframing it that way felt like switching from a tilt-a-whirl to the observation deck. Same carnival, but suddenly I could see the gears. I told myself, this flutter is information, not invitation. The ache hadn't vanished, but it had lost its crown. It was no longer the sovereign proof of love. It was a signal asking for care from me first. And in that single pivot, the ride slowed enough for me to unbuckle. I still remember the afternoon I stumbled upon Mary Ainsworth's strange situation videos in the campus library basement, headphones clamped tight, heart racing as if I were the toddler in the room. The moment the mother walked out and the baby's arms reached into empty air, I felt my own chest cave in because that was me, age 31, every time his chat bubble disappeared. Bowlby whispered through the screen, "We are wired to treat proximity as survival." My nervous system had never graduated from the crib. It still believed that inconsistent warmth was the best I could hope for. A week later, in a different stack of journals, I met Mayer's dogs on electrified grids, pressing levers that shocked them at random. They stopped trying to escape. Seligman called it learned helplessness, but in my notebook I renamed it learned longing, the way I kept pressing send on messages that stung, convinced the next one might finally soothe. The dogs lay down. I leaned in. Same circuitry, different cage. I began to see the overlap. Ainsworth's ambivalent babies and Mayer's helpless dogs both learned that reward and punishment arrived on the same unpredictable schedule. My brain, scanning for safety, had filed his hot-cold rhythm under possible nourishment. The dopamine spike that came with the rare reply was indistinguishable from the one that once came with mother's returning footsteps. Inconsistency wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the system. So I traced the wiring, early micro-rejections, teenage silences, adult ghosting, all reinforcing the same lesson. My nervous system wasn't broken. It was exquisitely trained to equate inconsistency with the possibility of love. Understanding that didn't fix the ache, but it gave the ache a name, and names, I was learning, are the first step toward rewiring. I used to think the problem was the men. Then I realized the arena itself was wired against me. One night I counted. In 43 minutes, I swiped through more faces than my grandmother met in her entire village life. Every new match arrived with the same neon promise, maybe this one will stay, maybe this one will see me. And the app's algorithm, clever as a casino engineer, served the reward at unpredictable intervals. A super like lit up my screen after 3 days of silence, and my pulse spiked exactly the way a rat's does when the pellet drops after 20 empty lever presses. I wasn't choosing. I was being chosen by a machine that understood intermittent reinforcement better than I understood myself. Ghosting, which once felt like a personal wound, became the rarest and therefore most potent pellet of all. The profile vanishes, and the scarcity circuit in my brain screams. That was the one who could have saved you. Meanwhile, the infinite queue kept scrolling, so I never reached the satiety that would let me log off. I felt like a diver carrying an oxygen tank filled with perfume, gorgeous, intoxicating, and completely useless for breathing. The more choices I had, the less agency I felt. The more I was seen by strangers, the more invisible I became to myself. I was no longer dating. I was donating my nervous system to a product whose profit model depended on keeping me suspended between hope and withdrawal. I still remember the night I drafted the contract on the back of a crumpled receipt to 13 a.m., thumbs trembling above the screen. I had just reread his Good Morning Angel from 3 days earlier for the 100th time, and the ache in my chest felt like a bruise I kept pressing just to prove it was still there. So I made a deal with myself, out loud, like a mother coaxing a frightened child. 48 hours of no reply, no checking his last scene, no story watching. Instead, I would soothe the part of me that believed silence equaled abandonment. I set a timer, literally, the kind with the shrill ring my grandmother used for hard-boiled eggs. And every time the panic rose, I opened the voice memo app and spoke to my anxious part as if she were 5 and needed a lullaby. I'm still here, I've got you. The story isn't over just because the phone is quiet. The non-negotiable check-in ritual became a tiny pilgrimage. Twice a day I placed my hand on my sternum, breathed to a 4 count, and asked, "What do you need that a text can't give?" Sometimes the answer was water, sometimes a walk, once a ridiculous dance to Dua Lipa in my socks. By hour 36, the urge to chase had softened from a scream to a murmur. I wasn't white-knuckling willpower. I was reparenting the girl who once waited by the window for a father who forgot. When the 48 hours ended, I didn't rush to reply. I typed a sentence, read it aloud, then asked my steadier self, does this come from fullness or fear? Only when the answer was fullness did I press send. I still remember the first morning I woke up and didn't reach for my phone to see if he'd texted. The room was quiet, the light the color of weak tea, and my chest, usually a frantic drum, was just quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something I hadn't felt since childhood, the certainty that I was already here, already enough, before any screen lit up. That was the moment the push-pull stopped being my weather system. I began measuring time in breaths instead of notifications, in the slow widening of my own ribcage. I started texting myself first little voice memos like, "Hey, I see you're scared. Let's put the kettle on." The silence that used to feel like starvation became the space where I could hear my own pulse arranging itself into steady Morse code. Safe, safe, safe. I still date, but now when someone drifts, I don't chase the dopamine ghost. I open the window, let the air in, and ask my younger self what she needs. Sometimes she wants a song, sometimes a walk, sometimes just the promise that I won't abandon her for a stranger's emoji. Last week, a man I liked took 24 hours to reply. Instead of spiraling, I brewed tea, watered the fern, and sent him a calm voice note saying, "I'm here, no rush." He called back laughing, relieved, and I realized the steadiness I'd been begging from others was mine to broadcast. The push-pull wasn't love, it was my nervous system learning to trust itself.